Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show. It is Local Chat, episode 157. I'm your host, Will Crosby, and joining me this week is the entire Subpixel boys. We've got Ian, we've got Kyle, we've got Jake. Hi, everyone.
There is interrupting the podcast.
They're all here
Awesome.
and definitely unmuted the entire time. Folks.
Hi.
No, wow. I got you. Thankfully, you guys took a second to speak. How dare you? Folks, we are here to do Game of the Year, or as I like to call it, Best of the Yearies, 2023. This year is 2024, and it is not the year we're talking about, just in case there's any confusion. Last year is the year we were talking about, and it's going to be incredible. I'm going to kick it off over to Ian, who's in charge of everything, the bookkeeper. Go ahead, kick it off.
Yeah, folks, so before we dive in, just wanted to give you a little behind the scenes peek at our format. Basically, we sat down and we decided the 15 best games of the year, and we're going to go through them in release order and spend a couple minutes talking about each game, why it mattered to us, what we loved about it, just singing its praises. As we go through the list, however, some of these games are going to be our game of the year. Hint, hint, there may be more than one. And when we hit those games, we'll specifically call them out as a game of the year and spend a little bit more time talking about them. Just a final reminder, though, there may be some spoiler talk. We're not going to spend a huge amount of time on each game, but it's game of the year. There may be a little bit of bit more details than you'd like, so we'll try and call that out a little bit. But you know what? Fuck it. We got 2 hours. It's time to get into it, boys. Are you ready for our game of the year discussion?
It's ready as I'll ever be.
Yeah, let's do it.
Thank you, Jake. Thank you, Jake.
Let's go.
Folks, first up,
waiting for someone to go first.
Same.
We have January 25th, our first best game of the year. Hi-Fi Rush from Tango Gameworks came out. Jake, I believe you were the first person to sample and start screaming about this game. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 2023, a packed year for the Goaties, and it kicked off with a bang. First month of the year, we got Hi-Fi Rush, the marvelously delightful rhythm game hack and slash. I'm not 100% sure how to describe it. It's got rhythm components. Yeah. It's got like action, traversal, platforming components. But just really tight and relatively short. And really fun.
Yep.
That's all I have to say about it.
Yep. Kyle, did you get a chance to play Hi-Fi Rush?
I did. I think Jake and I played it and probably finished it around the same time because I was minutes away from adding it to the GOTY list when Jake added it. And I was kind of upset that I wasn't first. But yeah, it was just such a breath of fresh air to kick things off. And the fact that it was a sleeper release was awesome. I mean, Microsoft released it at their dev conference last year, which is kind of it was a nice shadow drop game. Tango makes great stuff, and the fact that it was music based, rhythm based was really, really interesting. It was fun, colorful, really like pop art focused, and just I felt so happy playing it, and I love that feeling, and I think at least Jake and I knew right out of the gate that we wanted to nominate it, so I'm happy it's here.
Yeah. I felt like for me, what really struck me about this game was that it feels like what all video games should be, in that it's like beautifully creative and wonderfully unique. Like when it came out, people were just like, wait a minute, what is this game and who is it from? It's from the studio that keeps making horror games, but they made a rhythm action game, and it looks like an anime, and it's funny, and it's just like, it hit me with that weird shit that works all the time. You know, it's like Hi-Fi Rush is a fantastic game, and a lot of that is that it's completely different from everything else that was coming out at the time, before, since, etc. It feels like a very unique game. Will, did you get a chance to play Hi-Fi Rush?
Yeah, I didn't play all of it, but it's a fantastic game, and it's the best a rhythm game has felt since Guitar Hero.
Ooh, yeah.
Multiple
it did feel really good.
Set to 9-inch nails.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, let's keep the train moving. Next up, April 24th from Coal Powered Games, something that Will had us all keyed into Shadows of Doubt. Will, what is Shadows of Doubt?
Shadows of Doubt is a procedurally generated immersive sim set in a cyberpunk noir world, I guess, where cities are islands because the tide has risen so high. And you are a retired detective from the force, and you are getting kicked out of your apartment, and you need to start solving cases. The thing being, all of the cases and all of the people and everything inside the city is generated. It's all there for you. You can go to the address book, look them up, and go find them. You can surveil people. You can solve murders. You can solve cheating, spouses, kidnappings. You can take pictures of people's feet. You can do whatever you want.
Forgot about that.
And it's pretty great. And that from an indie developer is wild.
Yeah. So Jake, I know you played this game a bit. What was your take on it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was definitely. I think how I had talked about it on stream is it didn't make me feel as stupid as Case of the Golden Idol did, because I was able to do a fair bit of reasonable deduction on my own.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I definitely liked exploring, the grimy voxel world and figuring out like, okay, there are a couple of ways I can go about this. Let me figure out what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was good. I don't think I played nearly as much as either of you did, but I enjoyed the time that I spent with it.
Yeah, we played a fair bit. I feel like for me, the thing that Shadows of Doubt struck me as is it's the video game that so many other video games say they are or try to be. And yeah, fuck you, Todd Howard, that whole like, oh, these are real people. They go home, they do things. You see that mountain, you can climb it type shit. And it's like, well, not really. It's like you get in the game and there's like a very clear routine. Like none of these people feel real. The world doesn't feel real. But holy shit, Shadows of Doubt. This is not a marketing bullshit. It's a real world with real people living in it. They're working in it. They're eating in it. They're sleeping in it. Like you are literally following people, and you'll find their work badge and it says they work there and they work there between 10 and 5, and you're like, oh, it's 3:30. So you go to that building and that's where they are and they're working. And then when they leave, they go to the bar and then they go home. And the way that you start to interact with these people and realize like it's actually fantastic to live in a world to play around in a video game world where people have their own motives, they have their own routines, they have their own lives, and you're having to maneuver around that either to catch them in crimes or just ask them questions or gather evidence. And it's just really, really good. I will say it's funny, Jake, the Case of the Golden Idol you mentioned, because for me it was the opposite. Where Case of the Golden Idol, I was like, yeah, I'm pretty good at this. This is great. Shadows of Doubt feels like a very realistic detective simulator because the murders are dynamically generated. They will leave you enough clues to get there, but it's not somebody's handcrafted puzzle. So it actually is difficult to kind of solve these murders because it's not really handed to you on a plate. And it turns out I'm not a good detective, and it's not the game's fault. It's just like, I can't put this shit together. I solved 1 or 2 cases, but I probably got stumped on twice as many. And it's crazy to play a game that feels like an actual detective simulator as opposed to just solving puzzles. Kyle, did you ever get a chance to play Shadows of Doubt?
I did. I played through the tutorial when you guys first added it to the GOTY list, and I really enjoyed it. I think I enjoyed the world more than the gameplay. I can appreciate the depth that gets put into the notes system that you have of connecting things and the fluidity with which the world sort of reacts to what you're doing and all that stuff I think is really cool. It's just not the type of gameplay that I like. So I actually ended up approaching I did the tutorial twice, I think. So I spent like probably 3 hours total, maybe 3-4 hours in it, just figuring out different ways of completing the tutorial that I was given. And the cool thing is this is dynamic. So like no one's going to have exactly the same tutorial. But I think largely there's an experience within that tutorial that encapsulates really cool aspects of the game that I super dug. It's just not the type of game that I'm going to return to over and over and over again. But the fact that it exists and it's as polished as it is, I mean, the first time I loaded it up, I was like, this is really smooth. Like the experience of playing was effortless, and my computer wasn't screaming at me, which is always great. So I really love the amount of work that the devs clearly put into it, and I think it's a great accomplishment on their part.
Yeah,
On that
yeah,
note,
fantastic game.
I want to point out, I think I dropped this in the Discord at some point, but several around the time that the Xbox Series X launched, Ian, you had made a couple videos preceding that, one of which was like, what are we going to see from open world games on these next gen
Yeah.
consoles? And you basically point for point predict the game that Shadows of Doubt is. And what's
Yeah.
hilarious is that it's a voxel based indie game and not like a big AAA release.
Yeah.
It's so
But
good.
I mean, they did the thing. They put their resources towards the depth of the world and not towards visuals or voice or like, celebrity voice actors and all that shit.
Mhm.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to the next game of the year. April 28th from Respawn, Star Wars Jedi Survivor. Honestly, I'm not sure who's the bigger fan, Jake or Kyle.
We're both
don't
pretty
know.
big fans. Jake, why don't you take this since you're the one who did the video on it?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a lot of surprising stuff for me in Jedi Survivor, more kind of not the like the end game stuff, but kind of the little, things you could do off on the side. Like I love that there was a little like Animal Crossing kind of gardeny fishing element. Um, but beyond that, I loved Fallen Order. And then I liked what this game elevated from that game in the sense of the combat and the level design. There was more variety to your abilities. The worlds were bigger. There was a lot more to see and do, and there was a greater, I think, narrative depth because they already have the characters established, and they're just able to do a lot more with the relationships between the characters that you already know. And I will say, I was carried to the end of this far more by the narrative than by the
Mhm.
gameplay. I thought the gameplay was great, but I was definitely in it as a fan of the world and a fan of the story they were telling and all the twists and turns that it goes through. Um, yeah, big fan.
Yeah,
Awesome.
similarly, I mean, I just fell in love with the story of this game. I think it's probably one of the best Star Wars stories we've gotten in the last 10 years. And I think that the acting across the board, Cameron Monaghan and his name is escaping me, who plays Bode.
R2D2.
R2D2, yeah. R2D Chewbacca. They were both fantastic as two of the really important leads of the game. Of course, we have to give a shout out to Deborah Wilson. We stand Deborah Wilson. She made me this
And
necklace.
Stargate's Tony Amendola is also
Yes.
a key player.
A lot of excellent performances, but they wouldn't be anything without the script. And I think the script really carries the sort of epic Star Wars moments that we hope for and want to experience. It carries the through line throughout the entire game, and there's peaks and valleys at exactly the right moments. I think the expansiveness of the levels that you get to explore obviously far exceeds what Fallen Order had, but it exceeds it in a way that's not overwhelming. And I think everything feels really paced as far as the level design meshing with the story. As you experience the levels, you come back to certain sections that are then open to you later. But it's never too open worldy. And I like an open world game, but this felt so tailored to the type of experiences that I want to experience in games, that it just really clicked with me. And I think on top of the story and the performances and the music and the gameplay, some of those set pieces were just so fun. Like I was giggling at how much fun I knew something was going to be as soon as one of those big action sequences started. And I think whenever a game can do that, you've won me over. So I loved it. I thought it was great. And shout out to Jordan DeVries and all the people at Respawn who worked super hard on it. We really appreciate you guys.
Yeah, I think I was thinking about this game earlier today, and the thing that really struck me about it was there's so much fucking Star Wars nowadays, right? Like we're just dying.
Ain't that the truth?
We're drowning in Star Wars content nowadays, and a lot of it's bad, and then even some of the good stuff lumped in with that, too much of it just feels the same, right? And what's crazy about Star Wars Jedi Survivor is that it is an overused, saturated IP, and they could have made any number of fucking cookie cutter games, and they didn't. They made something that is completely new, completely unique. It's taking different genres, mashing them together, and creating something brand new with Star Wars and new Star Wars story, not just, let's do Vader and let's do Skywalker again. And it's crazy that they took that swing and they made it work, and then they made it even better in the sequel in Jedi Survivor.
And I like the way that it like there's you think there's a villain, but then like they throw in a whole that person dies, and then they throw in a whole new person, and then where the story ends, it's really I don't think they've announced it formally, but there's definitely going to be a third one of these, and I can't possibly know where on Earth the story's going to go from here.
It doesn't take place on Earth. Yeah, it goes to Earth. It's in a galaxy far, far away. So,
like Battlestar Galactica.
Yeah. Will, any thoughts, Will, before we head on to the next game?
I've never had a thought in my life. No, I didn't actually play this game, but I did edit a lot of the videos about it. And I will say, gleaning from that, the weird card combat miniatures game looked really fun. And I heard it was pretty cool. And then Rick the Door Technician.
I totally forgot. That's one of the other random bits that they shove in.
Yeah.
Like, here's a deck building game.
Jake, you didn't even talk about your gardening.
I mean, I briefly touched on it, but yeah, you can collect seeds from all around and plant them in this rooftop garden.
Gross.
And then stock an aquarium with all these interesting fish. Yeah. Very good.
We gotta move on. We're losing. Next up, May 12th, a day that will forever live in gamers' history. That's right, Nintendo finally dropped The Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom. Who wants to kick off on this one?
I think Kyle added it to the list.
Ding, 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 ding. This is my game of the year.
Yeah! We hit it.
This is mine. I adore this game. It is the only game this year I completely 100%ed in every aspect. I found everything on the map. I beat all the bosses. I got all the full the battery charges and the hearts and everything. And I don't often 100% games because I have to like a game enough to 100% it. And this one was just an instant. As soon as I started it, as soon as I realized the scope and the depth of its ability to make the player want to explore its world even further, I knew that I was going to be hooked. And I mean, there's not really much to spoil. The big thing that Nintendo hid from us before the release was the fact that there is not just the sky area that you can explore, and it's basically a map unto itself. There is a dungeon section and an underground world that you can delve into that's sort of the inverse of everything above it. And that the fact that you're doing 3 separate maps, and for me, it didn't feel repetitive. It just felt expansive at every moment that I found something new. The fact that there's so many systems tied together that just effortlessly work. The physics in that game, I'm so glad that Nintendo took the time and effort to perfect everything about that game, because I didn't run into a single bug. I didn't have any, maybe a single frame drop or something like that, but I couldn't even tell you because I was just enjoying myself so much. The fact that it's able to run on the Switch consistently so well and look as beautifully and artistically sort of woven together as it is, I think is a testament not only to Nintendo's first party developers and the people that work creating this sort of stuff, but it's also just it's kind of a high watermark for me of Nintendo's mastery of a system that they've created. And I think it's a standout moment for the Switch, which realistically, Tears of the Kingdom is the Switch's swan song. I mean, you can argue maybe Super Mario Bros. Wonder is, but I think most people will have fallen in love with Tears of the Kingdom like I did, in a way that really swept me up in its story, which is very simplistic but powerful. And I think that more stories need to take that route rather than being super overly detailed and trying to beat the player across the head with a bunch of messages. It's just telling a really simple story and letting the world and the gameplay do all the heavy lifting of making you as a player invested in that story. So I really connected with it. I think it's great. I think the music was fantastic. The emotional moments that come up in the story were really honestly kind of stirring. I thought the ending was beautiful. And it's my game of the year. So I'm happy to have played it, and I hope other people are too.
Nice. Yeah, I'll say one of the things that really struck me about it as being incredibly well done was, you know, when the news kind of came out that, hey, it's a sequel to Breath of the Wild, it's the same map, and they started showing it off, and you're like, this looks like the same fucking game, right? And to be fair, a lot of that game is the same as before, but the ways in which they were able to take the same map but alter it, and in a way that you could still have nostalgia stirred within you when you came across areas that you came across in Breath of the Wild 6, 7 years prior, and you're like, oh, I remember coming here, this is where I had that fight, oh, is this person still there? And the way that they knew that and slowly teased out who these characters were, where they've been, how they've evolved, how the world has evolved, how it's changed, how you still have those core mechanics, but they've added stuff on top to give you new twists on that. Just one of the best sequels ever made, in terms of how they were able to iterate on the first game and truly expand beyond it, but at the same time give you all sorts of pulls to the first game.
Yeah, I think Tears of the Kingdom is better than Breath of the Wild in almost every single way. The only way it isn't better is you don't just have that original map, but if you could somehow knit the two maps next to each other, that would be cool. I mean, in as far as like the original puzzles and stuff. And there were areas you would come across where you're like, hey, I kind of remember this from Breath of the Wild. And then it was either a version of it that was like 10 times harder, or a completely different puzzle there that like played on your misconceptions of thinking you remember what it is. And then, the first time I dove into the depths and it hits that bwamp, and it like everything is dark and you're just like, where am I? And then the first time I saw a dragon fly into one of them, and I was like, where you going, buddy? Is just absolutely wild. It's a fantastic sequel, and I can't believe they got away with it. It's crazy.
Yep. All right, let's go to the next game on the list, folks. June 15th.
I don't have any thoughts about.
You're allowed to have thoughts.
I thought you never played it.
Yeah.
No, I played it.
Oh.
Recently.
But
go ahead. Tears of the Kingdom.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you.
Yeah, well, I just assumed you had.
I wanted to make sure that I could be involved in the discussion.
Okay,
so let's move on.
Yeah, I mean, having not played a Legend of Zelda game since Wind Waker,
wow,
this was delightful. I'm not done with it by any stretch, but no, I think everything that y'all have said. I think what was most interesting to me is, they give you this arsenal of interesting abilities, and then you kind of then intuiting being like, oh wait, can I do this? Can I do this? Like, I remember at some point when you get the weapon fusion, and I fused a sword accidentally with one of like the little laser units, and suddenly I'm like, this, when I swing the sword, the laser goes off. I'm like, this is pretty cool. Yeah. And of course, I a little bit of it's lost on me having not played Breath of the Wild in terms of like the evolution of the world and all that. But yeah, crazy that this game runs as well as it does on what is arguably the weakest of the modern consoles.
No argument.
Yeah,
no argument.
It's weak.
It is the weakest of the previous generation of consoles.
Yes, seriously.
Art direction is great. Yeah, good stuff.
Yeah. So moving on, June 15th, from Sergeant Okie Dokie Velasquez and the Liquid Horse. Just a little bit of behind the scenes. This is apparently 3 different indie developers that banded together to create a giant fucking hit, BattleBit Remastered. I'll dive right into this because I know this is my little darling. BattleBit Remastered is basically a super low res. It's not exactly voxel, but it definitely has a little bit of a voxel Roblox look to it. multiplayer FPS. It's basically Battlefield. It's 254 players. The crazy thing about it, though, is that Battlefield, right? Longstanding EA series. They keep pumping money into it. They really want it to be good. They just put out the incredible shit show that was Battlefield 2042, and it's just falling apart at the seams. These 3 fucking indie devs come in and they make a completely better version of Battlefield just across the board, and everybody loves it. Giant hit. It just feels like a beacon of hope in this horribly over monetized, like over stylized industry. And they're like, no, forget the fucking graphics, forget everything. We're just going to give you more players. We're going to like tweak the gameplay so it feels fantastic. We're going to drop the XP requirements so that you're just constantly leveling up and getting new weapons. And oh yeah, we've got proximity voice chat, which just makes the whole community want to like scream and shout and help each other and role play every time you get shot and you're dragging your dead buddy around, or you shoot somebody and drag him around and he's screaming for his life. Let me go. Just it's like one of the greatest examples of when AAA games get bad, you need an indie to come in and do the exact same thing 10 times better to make everything feel just like it should have in the first place. Who else played BattleBit Remastered here?
I played it with you, which was awful, but I did play it. No, it was super fun. It's a fantastic game. It looks like Roblox, and it makes you want to rip your eyes out. But it feels really good, and it plays really well. And like you said, the proximity chat is really good. The dying and the person you killed gets like 2 seconds to yell at you, or like call you out and swear at you is really funny.
Forgot about that.
Yeah. But yeah, screaming for a medic, just that game felt really good. It's one of the best multiplayer games I played this year, and it deserves to dethrone Battlefield in its current state.
Yeah. Yeah, it's weird because I wasn't sure if I wanted to put it on the list, because on my personal top 10 list, because I'm like, it's not doing anything necessarily new, but at the same time, it is filling a niche that the rest of the industry has just completely face planted on, and it's providing that shooter feels so well, and it's just incredible. Anybody else get a chance to play it?
So I didn't get a chance to play it. You guys streamed it, right? I'm pretty sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure
we
I
did
caught
a
a stream. At least like 20-30 minutes of it. I have not played it, but I watched a little bit of it on YouTube, and the thing that struck me is exactly what you said, Ian, where it's kind of doing something correctly that the rest of the industry has forgotten how to do correctly, apparently. But I think the thing on top of that is it's lowered the barrier of entry to, you don't need like, a ridiculously high-end computer or something to play this. Like, it's pretty low res, but it's just as fun as those higher quality, in quotes, games that EA likes to pretend that they put work into. And I thought that it looked really fun. I was glad that you both seemed to like it a lot, and I want more games that look like this. I like the art style a lot. I like the fluidity of it, and I think that sorry, I have it up on the side just so that I can look at it while I'm talking and pretend I know what I'm talking about. I like it. I like multiplayer games. I wish I played more of them, and this seems like one that maybe I'll grab on a sale or something like that, and we can jump in together.
Yeah, I just one more thing on the graphics. It's one of those things where you look at it and you go, this game is ugly, and it is kind of ugly, but honestly, I would much rather prefer that visual style to anything COD or Battlefield is putting out nowadays. And there's 2 big reasons for it. One, I talked about it on local chat. One is readability. There's too many fucking textures and graphics in games now that if you have a guy standing in front of a building, it takes you way too long to see the guy because there's fucking rush texture and leaves and vines and broken glass and shit. And they blend in unintentionally. This game, it's like you see somebody, boom, immediately there's a guy there, right? And the other one is the draw distance is insane. Like in terms of in the game, it's probably 1 kilometer or more, and there are people doing sniper shots and non-sniper shots out to that distance. Like I've had like 400 or 500 meter iron sight shots on people, and it's because the graphics are so low, you get the draw distance. So there's 254 people on that map, and you can actually fucking see them even if they're all the way across the map, because the graphics allow you to do that. So it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, the game's ugly, but it turns out there's a huge gameplay advantage to that, and that's fantastic.
Awesome.
Anyways,
Jake, did you play it?
I downloaded it on the free weekend and then I never played it.
Wow.
But I did watch the stream.
Wow.
I know.
You
Fake fan.
Fake fan. Moving on. 1 week later, June 22nd, from Shape Shop, Mars First Logistics. So I know this was my little baby, my little darling. Anybody else get a chance to play this game? Will played it.
I want to. I'm sorry.
Will played it. Hi, Will.
I played it like the same day as you. It's okay. It's really sorry. You should explain what the game is first, then I can give my opinion on it because I don't want to explain the game part.
So it's basically an engineering game. You are running a logistics company on Mars, and it's very indie. It's very cutesy, and essentially you're just building little vehicles that are purpose built and designed to pick up weird shaped or weird sized packages and then take them across the terrain of Mars and drop them off in a location. So it's literally just a little vehicle building game. What did you think of it, Will?
It sucks. It was awful. No, I actually really enjoyed it. The puzzles were cool. The being like, oh, how the frick do I get this umbrella across the map? Because every time I have it on me, that falls off, then it drags, and so you're like coming up with these. It has this great way of like, as soon as you put together a design, you test it out, and you can immediately just hit the menu button, change the design, figure it out, all that sort of stuff. And then you realize you can design it so, okay, I have to bring this box from point A to point B and then put it on a shelf. But I can design one vehicle to get it from point A to point B and then like rework it to get it up onto a shelf. But then if I might be wrong, but then there were some of those where you had to build a vehicle that did both. So like you couldn't always get away with doing two separate vehicles. You had to like be able to get something somewhere and do something.
I don't think you're wrong. I think the thing is, if you're carrying an item and you go into the build item, you automatically drop the item.
Yeah.
So you can change your vehicle whenever. You just need to be aware that when you come back in, your vehicle's going to be wherever it was. The item's going to be dropped. So you got to re-pick it up.
I had to design something to pick it up, and then when you go to change your design, it drops it. So you're like, oh no, I have to have a design that can pick it up and do the secondary thing I want to do. It's also looks really cool and it's cute and it plays well. So.
Yeah. And the music's awesome. What really struck me, and I said it's an engineer's game, and I really believe that because there's not a single solution. There's not even like two obvious solutions to every puzzle. Like they pretty quickly give you so many parts. And like you said, there's so much flexibility in the vehicle designing that you get to this point where you're just like, I'm going to make, like, I remember I had a watering can, right? And I made like a long finger hydraulic extender. So it just extended from the vehicle, poked through the little watering can handle, and then like curved in itself and just like tucked it in like under my little bicep. And then I had rockets, so I just rocket jumped across the map to the location, and then I uncurled and daintily placed the watering can. Like I played so many hours of that game because it was just like, okay, one more. Okay, this is a weird little object. Like it's a trophy and I have to place it upright, and it's a giant trophy. Like it's one of those games where they're like, I have an idea. I'm not going to build the game. There's no scope creep in this game. I'm not going to build 20 different things. I have a perfect little mechanic, and I'm just going to implement and give you so many different ways to play around with it. And it feels fantastic. Any other thoughts on Mars First Logistics?
Great art direction. Like, great style.
Incredible. All right. Next up, we've got Baldur's Gate 3. I'm going to start off with the question. No pressure. Jake, did you ever play Baldur's Gate 3 this year? Or last year?
I was never in the proper headspace for it. So no.
That's totally fine. Will, you want to talk about Baldur's Gate 3?
Sure. Baldur's Gate 3, the sequel to Baldur's Gate 2, which is a sequel to Baldur's Gate 1.
What?
You know, it's
Really?
Who says you can't make a sequel?
Titan's favorite role-playing game.
Yeah, exactly. Who says you can't make a sequel 30, 40 million years later? 20 years later? Baldur's Gate 3 is the closest approximation humankind will ever get to D&D in a virtual space. It feels so good, It feels like you were sitting down at a table with not with friends, but with professional actors, and they are doing a great job to make you feel like
what everyone wants to sit down at a table with.
People who are good at D&D.
People who are good at D&D. And it just comes together in a way that feels really good. I think it exploits everything about Dungeons and Dragons that's cool. Like, hey, what if I just fill a bag up with exploding barrels and then throw that bag at someone and then light it on fire? Will it crash the game? Yes. Hey, what if I stack these barrels to get into the city of Baldur's Gate before you're supposed to? Go for it, bud. What if I jump into Abyss and Featherfall at the end? Well, you'll land in the Underdark, but all of your teammates will crash and splatter next to you. It is an incredible game.
What if I carry a dead gnome in my pocket and just throw them at people every now and then?
What if the main quest giver dies and you don't have Speak with Dead, so you don't know where to go next? The game somehow figured it out, and I was able to keep going. Absolutely wild. It doesn't. When you get to a certain point, you see the cracks if you really push it to its limit, but I only noticed that one time, and it's just a fantastic game. I highly recommend it. It's tight, it's good, and that's all I gotta say about it.
Yeah, I'm so glad you said it's tight and good, because it's also my game of the year.
Ding 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 ding.
Keep that going.
I want to say, I did not want to play this game because I don't like CRPGs, computer RPGs, point and click type things. And I tried to play Divinity Original Sin 2, and I kind of bounced off of it a little bit. And when this game started getting fucking 95s, etc. on Metacritic when it came out, I was like, fuck, I'm gonna have to play this fucking game. And I'm so glad I did, because this game is incredible. It feels like this game is what all RPGs and open world games try to be, but never really get there, in terms of like, we're going to let you talk to all these people, and these people feel real, and you can talk to them, and you can have this conversation, or you can make this choice, and this will happen. You make this choice. You go over here, do this, go over, do that. We're going to support all of it. And then you play the game, and it's like, oh, cool, it's Starfield. So, every conversation goes the same, but then there's a point where they say, do you want to do A or B? And it turns out the answer's the same. It doesn't fucking matter. It's going to do the same thing in the end. Whereas like Baldur's Gate just gives you such an incredible sense of player empowerment. I think the best way to describe this, I wish I remembered who said it on one of the podcasts I listened to, but they said that, fuck, that is who it was.
Told you.
It's right before he killed the elephant.
It's his wife.
The crazy thing about this game, the best way to describe it is a narrative sandbox. Like we're used to physics sandbox in a way. Like Tears of the Kingdom is an incredible physics sandbox. This is a narrative sandbox in that you can pretty much talk to people and you can change the story and twist the story around however you really want to do. And it's funny you say, Will, like when at some point you start to see the cracks. And I feel like for me, I'm not saying the cracks aren't there, but it took so long to get there, especially in terms of narrative, because it felt like no matter which way I went down certain conversations with people, there was always something there. Like if we had hours and hours, we could talk about different ways we dealt with people. You know, like there's a witch at one point, and it turns out a lot of people fight the witch. I didn't fight the witch. I talked to the witch. They offered to try and take the thing out of my head, and I ended up Shadowheart lost an eye, and I was like, okay. And it didn't really do anything. It just gave her an eye patch, but I'm like, okay, it was worth the risk. And then the witch is like, okay, see you later. And I'm like, cool witch, thanks. And everybody else is like, I fucking hate that witch. That was the worst boss fight ever. It was so hard. And I cheesed it this way, and then I did this. And I'm like, what boss fight are you talking about? Like that lady, she helped me out. She tried, but it didn't work. And it's just crazy. I do want to say one thing about this game that shocked me to my core a couple weeks ago, months after I finished playing the game, that I had this realization. And basically what happened is, as I was playing this game, I pretty quickly fell in love with Gale. And I'm like, literally on stream, moment one, I was like, fuck yeah, Gale's my boy. And we had this courtship and we started dating. But towards the end of the game, I was like, I'm not really into Gale anymore, you know. But I was like, grow apart. Like he's kind of kind of a ditz in a way. Like he's a little vapid, and I'm like, I'm
kind
not
of a
really
himbo.
sure, but I didn't want to make that decision, and that didn't really sit right with me. And it wasn't until a couple weeks ago that I was like, oh, I know why I was feeling that way, because I've had real life romantic relationships that have gone the same fucking way, where you get so excited about it and then you get months into it and then you're just like, I've got to end this, but I don't want to end it. And like the person's great, but it's also, it's reached its end. I'm not into him anymore, but I got to end it, but I don't know how to break up with it. And in Baldur's Gate 3, I could break up with him, but I didn't want to. And it's just fucking wild to me that this game, the characters are so fucking well written, every single one of them, that I can have literally a romantic relationship, full emotions and everything, with one of those characters. And it's not because that was a storyline in the game. They did not write it that way. They just wrote the character so well that I started interacting with them as if they were a real fucking person. And I had an emotional relationship arc with this fucking NPC. And that's fucking wild to me that this game was able to do that. It's crazy.
You're gonna boot up the game, and you're gonna be like, "Oh, Gale! Oh, hey, Gale!
Hey, that's
how you
literally what I
been?"
started doing. Literally, I was avoiding him at camp. I was like, I don't want to talk to you right now. No, I'll sleep in my tent tonight. I'm okay. Game's wild.
I wish I had played 100 hours of this instead of 100 hours of Starfield.
Oh my
For that
god.
video.
You, Jake, seriously, you'd fucking love this game. Because the final thing I'll say is, I had that relationship with Gale. It's not because Gale's the best character. It's not because Gale's the best written character or anything. There's literally like 12 other companions in that game, and they're all just as well written and nuanced and have as much depth as that. So for my relationship with Gale, somebody else has that with Asterion. Somebody else has that with the Heslin or Hassan, whatever the druid guys. Halsin. Yeah, it's just like,
Which one is
with Karlach. Halsin's the bear, yeah. He's the bear. He's the bear.
I was with
twice over, right?
Yeah,
Those are
he's
the lady.
very much two bears.
I was with
The what? The lady?
Yankee lady.
Oh, God, Yankee.
God.
Yeah. Oof.
No.
That was fiery.
Lizzo.
We fought in combat every time we made love. It's great.
I did get into a moment where I had engaged relations with both Will and Gale, and then very much like Mass Effect 2, there's a point where it comes to a head, and they're like, you have to choose. And I just kept denying the continuing of the conversation for like until the end of the game. So I was just like, hey, and then they would always end up sleeping, like tenting next to each other. So I'd be like, can I get a kiss? And then I'd walk over to Will and be like, can I get a kiss? And just to be flirty.
Wow.
Yeah. So unfortunately, I did not like Baldur's Gate 3. I enjoy watching people play it more than playing it myself. Mm-hmm. I think the ability for the game to connect with so many people is amazing. It's a testament to Larian's commitment to their storytelling and their player engagement that it works on a level that it clearly does. It just didn't work for me. I found the characters to be really well written, and the companions especially were excellent. The voice acting was great. I did not find the overall story and story pacing very enjoyable. Especially to me, Act 2's climax felt like it should have been the climax of the game. And I feel like the other two, it's not spoilers, but there's 3 big enemies that you face throughout the different acts. And the other 2 enemies that you end up facing in Act 3 were incredibly underwritten for me versus the Act 2 enemy. And I thought that his performance, with J.K. Simmons voices him, was great and really nuanced, and I felt that the other 2 fell really flat. So most of Act 3, which is when you finally do arrive to the city proper of Baldur's Gate, didn't have that appeal for me to continue the end story. I did all the side quests that I could. I did most of my time in the last 60 hours of the game or so, maybe 50 hours, was just spent not progressing the main story because I just didn't want to. What's up?
How am I just learning now that Academy Award winner J.K. Simmons voices a character in this game?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's in a lot of
Learn it,
video
baby.
games.
Nobody told me?
Why would we spoil that for
Yes.
you?
Did you
It's
know
honestly,
he's in Spider-Man?
yeah.
Did you see
No
Spider-Man?
way.
He's in
I played
Whiplash.
Somebody
Spider-Man.
told me he's in Portal. I haven't heard it.
Yeah, I just did not find the overall story pacing enjoyable to play through, and it felt backwards to me, the way I experienced it. And I'm sure other people have experienced it in a variety of different ways, but ultimately you can't change the path that leads you to the end game, as far as like you will always end up in Baldur's Gate.
Mhm.
And the sort of reticence that Larian has with allowing you to regress back to areas previously conquered, um, even just to do like a sideline quest that has no impact on the main story, really bothered me. And I wanted to return to areas where it's like, I know I didn't do this dungeon, I know I didn't kill that dragon, why can't I go back and at least see that area? There's something that happens in Act 2, at the end of Act 2, that I would like to go back and see, like what actually happens. And the way that they present it is that there's this thing you really need to do because you're under a time crunch, and you need to get to Baldur's Gate. But then once you're there, it's like the time crunch doesn't exist. Like you can spend as much time doing side quests and stuff that doesn't progress the main story as you want, and you never feel any more under threat than the story sets you off at the end of Act 2. And that kind of bothered me. I didn't get to say this when we talked about it on local chat. I have never, and I can say this clearly and loudly, I've never experienced more bugs in a video game. I had hard crashes over 200 times within the first 40 hours of my playthrough. Just playing the game 15 20 minutes, desktop just completely gone. And that was not only annoying, it became infuriating, and it it made me not want to play a game that I had already invested 20, 30 hours at that point. And I was like, well, I'm going to go see the end. And if a game releases in such a state as that, and I know that a lot of people had a lot of different experiences based on the type of components that they have in their computers, or if it was on consoles, my experience really hurt my experience with the game from a hardware standpoint really impacted negatively my experience with the story and my ability to actually play it in a way that was enjoyable. So I'm glad that it's in a much better state than it was, but I think for so many people to have heaped so much praise upon a game that clearly was not very well optimized is like counteractive to what people were saying when Cyberpunk released, and it clashed so much in my mind that I feel like I hate being the odd one out, and I this is a game that I am primed to enjoy, and like it's the type of story that I want to enjoy. I've played so many D&D campaigns over the years that I've really sunk my teeth into with friends and had those experiences that the game is clearly trying to get the player to experience, but it just didn't work for me on a lot of levels. And I didn't connect with it. So it didn't make my list. But I say all that with the caveat that I'm glad that a story with such strong it has such a strong moral sensibility, and it's very inclusive, is at the forefront of a lot of people's minds for one of the top games of last year. I think that's really important. I'm glad Larian was able to accomplish that with their storytelling. I just wish that on a bunch of other levels, like technical and story pacing, it had connected with me, but it just didn't.
Mm-hmm. Valid, for sure.
Gotcha. Any other thoughts on Baldur's Gate 3?
Go play it.
You should play it. You should go and experience it because it is well made.
Hell yeah.
And it's worth your time. I just didn't connect with it.
Okay. Next up, From Software, Armored Core 6: Fires of Rubicon. Jake, I know you're screaming. I know you're eager. Let's hear it.
Yeah, this was the arc from I played Elden Ring in January of last year. It was I missed it during its original release window. I played it like right before our Game of the Year discussion last year, and that was the first time I'd ever played a From Software game. I mean, like, oh yeah, okay, I get it. I see. I understand. My third eye has been opened.
Finally.
And then I think it was it at the Game Awards that they announced Fires of, or maybe not that Game Awards, but one before. It
No,
was
I think
whichever
it
one,
was.
Ian, you and I had watched it, and they did the announce for Armored
Yeah.
Core 6. And we've talked about this has always been a universe that, from an outsider's perspective looking in, being like, okay, this is checking all my boxes for the kind of science fiction storytelling that I'm into. And so, yeah, I played Armored Core 6, Fires of Rubicon, and then I immediately New Game Plused it, and then I immediately New Game Plused it. Just crazy gameplay, storytelling, art direction, music, completely different from Elden Ring. For two games made by the same studio to be so vastly different. Obviously, there is a lot of connective tissue, but for all intents and purposes, totally different games. Yeah, this was for a long portion of the year was my game of the year, and now is a very tight second to what my actual game of the year is.
Starfield.
Yeah,
Starfield.
it's Starfield.
Yeah.
This thing was just wild from front to back, and the way that the narrative, the New Game Plus and New Game Plus Plus, alters the story and gives you different narrative options and different outcomes, just absolutely crazy stuff. That I might go replay it again in like a month.
Yeah,
It's
and
so
I can
good.
understand that, because for me, the thing that you immediately feel when you play this game is the feel. Like, it just feels so good, which is hard to do because there's a lot of systems going on. There's lock-ons. There's different gun feels. You're in this mech. It doesn't control normally, quite frankly. It's got a weird little control scheme of it. Not as crazy as the older games, but it's still got something a little weird going on. But it feels so good, and it feels satisfying when you're doing that combat. So I can totally get that urge to just keep playing and playing and playing.
Armored Core 6, Fires of Rubicon is my obstacle. I overcame an obstacle. I have a life of adversity.
Thrilled for your journey,
And-
Will.
What'd you say?
I'm thrilled for your journey.
It is probably one of the
I was
greatest
so
games
invested.
of last year, of all time almost. It's tight, it's good, it feels great. Those bosses can suck it. I defeated every single one of them.
Which one in particular, Will? Which one can
All
suck
of
it?
them.
Balteus,
There you go.
whatever his balls are, he can suck them because I don't care anymore. I didn't beat him pre-patch, but I think I could. The worm boss was the coolest thing I've done in a video game in a very long time. The silence,
So good.
the Jango Fett Attack of the Clones bomb silence before like the thing hits it is so good. Fantastic game. And also, I hate to say it, I absolutely hate to say it, but that game would not be as good if it wasn't as difficult as it is. It is good because it is that hard. You get into a set mode and you just do a really great job, and you earn that fucking name by the end of that game, and it just goes right into New Game Plus, and it just says Raven, and you're just like, yeah, that's me.
Spoilers. Wow.
Also, Will,
just kidding.
by the end, did you think that Balteus was the most difficult fight for you? Because for me, it was the Coral Guardian when all was said and done. Like that one where you get it down to 0 and then it has a second phase.
So-
that was tough.
That one, no. So that one I could get his first phase in about 15 seconds. And then it was the second phase that took. Like, I got to the point where he would spawn in, he wouldn't be hittable, and as soon as he was hittable, I would set off all of the rockets into him, which would break his shield, and then I just double-barreled those machine guns into him, and he would first phase done. So it was still hard, but it wasn't because of the two phases. It's because the second phase sucked so much butt. But I still want to say Balteus in my head was the hardest, only because I wasn't good at the game when I was picking back up from Balte. I mean, I wasn't good at the game the first time, but like if I went straight to him at the end of the game, I think he probably wouldn't be up there. That one person in that one place was tough, who I can't think of right now. But bosses were great, fantastic game. I honestly might play it again. It's that good.
It's real good. And the true ending, the New Game Plus ending, is crazy.
You're a robot.
It's so
Did you
good,
know
guys.
that?
It's so good.
Also, I made some sweet icons. They were really good.
Oh yeah, there's a whole. I mean, all sorts of the armor customization, the mech customization is so good. But yeah, there's an emblem editor. I made a Subpixel emblem. I made some emblems from like my own like in-universe fiction. I think I made the Elden Ring seal. Good stuff. And then one that says Jesus Christ is my co-pilot.
That's good stuff. Kyle, did you play it at all?
I did. I really like this game a lot. I have not beaten it. I'm very close. About I think 28 hours, like somewhere around there. I'm taking my time with it, and also it's really difficult. So I it's only my second ever FromSoft game that I've played, and I think the worlds that they create are what really draw me into their games so much. It's one of the reasons why me and so many other people fell in love with Elden Ring. But Armored Core is sort of a different type of a different type of experience in world building for FromSoft than Elden Ring was. And I think it's interesting how effective From Software still remains at being effective at world building and storytelling within that world, even if it's just through like some of the cinematic stuff that happens, the voiceover from your handler guy. But all that to say, I think that the thing that really has continually drawn me in was the ability to realize once you've understood the controls and how the game handles and how it flows from boss to boss and level to level. I really have enjoyed getting better and knowing that I'm improving, because it's like I can look back and be like, I did not play that boss the first time I faced him the way I'm playing it now, and that's because I've progressed in a methodical way that the game is sort of making me reconcile with. I think it was really cool. I am looking forward to beating it, and I'm glad that Jake has been a stalwart champion of this game, and I think it's awesome. Well, is there going to be DLC? Maybe
Ashes
there'll be DLC.
I don't know. Yeah, Ashes of Rubicon. I do like. Will,
no, I was just gonna say I developed like the claw where I would use my
for both. Yeah.
My middle fingers for the triggers, because I was just holding down the Gatling guns the whole time. So it was pretty great.
Same. Yeah, in like my top 5 gameplay moments of the year, like I talked about one of them being that bit in Amnesia the Bunker where you go up into the pillbox and you're like, oh, the beautiful world, and then you gunfire
World War
clacks
I.
off the concrete and you're like, oh, World War I's still happening. That ice worm battle. And yeah, the build up, like the tension in this, like the string, the orchestra part, and then it's so obviously riffing on that episode of Evangelion where they have the big like vertical cannon to kill the angel, and the bit
just watched that today.
It's tense, like tension.
I've seen that scene. Oh wow!
Build up, silence, and then Rusty goes, "Watch out for friendly fire," and then blasts the worm. It's so good. It does not get better than that, folks. It does not get better
into
than
my
that.
veins. Too good.
Speaking of injecting, next up, September 26th, Cyberpunk 2077 Phantom Liberty from CD Projekt Red. Which one of you sickos wants to talk about this game's
did you add this?
second chance?
I didn't add it, but I played it.
I think I added it. But if you can talk about it if you want to.
Sure. Well, I mean, you played Cyberpunk at launch, or the base game. I didn't play the base game, so this was my first foray into into the world of CD Projekt Red at all. I haven't played any of the Witcher games. This was my first dabbling in their body of work, and I talked a bit on stream when I played this. I really liked it. Obviously, I avoided it on first launch because it was, one of the more infamously disastrous launches of a video game in recent history.
It was bad. It was very bad.
But
Yeah.
I was really pleased with this. I think still on the whole, the mechanical, like the mechanics of the game, I'm not super jazzed with even now. Having completed Phantom Liberty and having gotten one of the endings of the main story, but narratively, man, these guys can they can spin a yarn.
It is rich. It is a rich DLC story, and
Yeah, and especially for being really an entirely different kind of story than the main one is. This one is it's steeped in kind of like espionage thriller fiction, whereas I guess the base game kind of has elements of that too, but this one really is like it's a spy story. It's about spies and it's about espionage and counter espionage, and it
the
has
president.
narrative twists and turns. Yeah, suddenly I remember because I talked about on stream suddenly I was like, oh, I'm in the like I totally intended to do the Phantom Liberty stuff after I had finished the base game, but suddenly I was like, oh, I'm in the Phantom Liberty story now. I'm like, okay, I'll follow this thread and see where it goes since the game doesn't have a problem with me doing that. And then yeah, suddenly the character that you've been introduced to is like, the president's plane is falling out of orbit. You're gonna have to go rescue her. And I'm like, what? Yeah, and so it kicks off with a bang, and it goes fairly full throttle to the conclusion. I'd be interested to know how you ended it, Kyle, if we're not worried about dabbling in spoilers.
I'd prefer not to do spoilers just because
Okay.
it is semi-recent,
my
and I
answer off the air.
may or may not want to do a video on it.
Okay.
But yeah, I think the choice that you are given is nice. as in like that's good. Like that's a good way to suss that out from the player. I Jake, pretty much I'm just gonna double everything you said. I really dug the story that this DLC told. Obviously the inclusion of someone like Idris Elba brings its own sort of sensibilities to there's a lot of weight to his character, and I think he plays it perfectly well. And the tightness of that story as it's sort of wound around the rest of Cyberpunk 2077 as a game, and you can see different through lines that start appearing from it while you're playing through just the Dogtown section. I really think that they did such a good job of integrating everything and making it feel like part of the whole game, but still making it stand out on its own merits. I really enjoyed it. It's not too long. It's only like 20 hours maybe, like if you really want to do like everything. But yeah, I really enjoyed the way that. Yeah, it might be like 15, but it was well worth my time and money, and I thought it was great. And having played the base game at launch, I think everything that they did to improve it has been a big step forward. It's still not perfect. I think there's still a certain level of jank that will inherently be in Cyberpunk that sort of makes it Cyberpunk. And you're never going to get away from that. I think that the Red Engine,
chalk it up to faulty implants,
is I know it's their engine, but I think it's a tough engine to develop with. And just the level of jank that you can still experience is not enough to sort of get its good graces from everyone for being like, oh, they fixed it. It's still not fixed, but it's better. It's tighter. You're less likely to have a bad experience. You may still have one, but again, it's the percentage of enjoyability that they're looking to get out of, I think, is landing much higher for people who play it. So I liked it. I enjoyed it. And I think more people should play it.
Yeah, I think what you said last really hit with me, which is I played 2 to 3 hours of this, and then I Googled, can I refund an Xbox purchase? And the
No,
answer's
you
no.
can't.
And I was like, fuck, there's $30 down the drain. But I think you kind of characterize it very well, which is that they have not fixed Cyberpunk 2077. At its core, it's still got a lot of problems, but they have fixed a lot of the problems, and they've increased the percentage of people that are likely to tolerate and enjoy the game. I'm not part of that percentage. I think the game's still fundamentally fucked.
Sure.
But I could at least tell Phantom Liberty was a very solid shot at making the game better, and they were taking a lot of steps in the right direction, and it felt very well. There's a lot of DLCs where it's like, hey, what if you just like go over there for a fucking bit and then come back? Like a lot of that shitty Fallout 3 DLC is like that. But there's some bad Fallout 3 DLC that's just like, hey, go over there for a bit and I don't know, fight China and then come back.
The alien, the
Todd,
UFO
Todd,
DLC
he doesn't
is the
speak for me,
worst.
Todd.
Yeah.
If you're watching this.
And then but this is like a very well done DLC. It's just for me, it did not do enough. Honestly, it gave me PTSD as soon as I started playing Phantom Liberty, that I was like, oh fuck, I'm playing Cyberpunk. It like reminded me of how bad the original game was. And I was so hyped to be like, they fixed it finally. And then I was like, oh fuck, this just reminds me of how bad the original, like it felt like for every good thing, I still felt the bad from the original game. And I wanted so desperately to have the positive experience you guys had.
Yeah, the NPCs and the cops still do not react properly. Like they just don't. And it's unfortunate. I'm glad they did like a stopgap for it. We're like, it's good enough. And it's like, yeah, it is, but it's still not great. So it's kind of worse. I think the story elements are what really props up Phantom Liberty, and those are well worth it.
Yeah, and I will say on the interwovenness of the DLC with the main stuff, I was surprised that, like, obviously they got Keanu back in the booth for a lot of stuff. Like, he's still all over the place in this DLC, which I wasn't expecting. It was like, oh, Idris Elba's the celebrity for this chunk of the story. But no, Keanu is still popping up every which way and chatting you up any chance he gets. So, yeah.
Cool.
I don't think I'll ever forgive Cyberpunk 2077, but
you don't need to try Phantom Liberty.
You will forget.
That's exactly what I'm gonna say. When I forget, I'll try Phantom Liberty. But at this
So
moment in time,
remember.
I will probably scream and turn off my Xbox if I ever load that game up.
Moving on. It's time to talk about October 13th release from Nathan O'Marsh, South Scrimshaw Part 1. Jake, this is another little find from you. What the fuck is this game?
So this was directed into my social feed by Jump Over the Age Citizen Sleeper developer Dr. Gareth Damian Martin. And they had retweeted it being like, hey, this visual novel, it's like a pseudo sci-fi documentary thing. And I've found since playing In Other Waters and Citizen Sleeper that my sci-fi sensibilities are very much aligned with Jump Over the Age. And so anytime they retweet something, I'm like, okay, I'll check it out. And yeah, I checked this thing out. It's like a 90-minute visual novel. And it just, I don't know how someone can so accurately like construct the perfect one-to-one PBS National Geographic like ocean documentary, but through this sci-fi lens. But you so quickly fall into it and kind of forget that it's a made-up world because it's so specific and richly detailed and very kind of thoughtful in the way that it's telling its story, where you're like, oh yeah, this is how documentaries are constructed. And yeah, I had an emotional response to it by the end. It's crazy. And I know the big argument that we're going to have here is it actually a game? But
we don't have to have that argument because this is your...
It's my game of the year.
Woo!
Fuck you, it's a game. There it is, folks.
It's I was, it was for so long it was Armored Core, and then this came along and just like so specifically spoke to me as a person, and a person who grew up watching tons of National Geographic documentaries and you know, Shark Week on the Discovery Channel and stuff on Animal Planet.
Narrated by Keith David.
Yeah, the two National Geographic documentaries that are narrated by Keith David, Jewels of the Caribbean Sea and Ocean Drifters, both from the mid 90s. Go check them out.
Jake forced me to watch it at gunpoint while I was letting him stay in my apartment.
For Will's wedding. Yeah, this thing rocks. It's so good and it's free. Everybody should play it.
It's
Nice.
really good. I played it after Jake talked about it. I played the whole thing in one sitting, and then I messaged Jake, South Scrimshaw ripped. Oops, I gave it a 9. Because it's so fantastic. It was a screenshot of my Notion where I rate games. It's really fantastic. You know, I thought it was real for a little bit. And I was like, this is cool. Not actually, but you just, like Jake said, you're just like, is this real? Yeah. And there's a couple points, like, it doesn't overstay its welcome in any of the scenes. It does tangents really well, where it, like, informs you how they work, and you can, like, click on them throughout the story. And then, yeah, like, there's scenes and stuff where you're just like, oh, they're gonna sit on this for a while, and things just happen, and they move on. And you get a real emotional attachment to this thing, and it's crazy how good it is.
Yeah, I think the artwork is utterly perfect for the story that it's telling. And the sort of splicing in of the human elements, where it's so technical. It's a story told from such a technical perspective that when it sort of breaks in and it's like you're hearing the voice recording of those divers who are stuck in the storm swell, and then this thing emerges from the depths and essentially saves them. Those sections, I think, were really where the kind of ability of that world to envelop you as I guess I'll say player. I felt more like a watcher than a player. And that's one of the things I really love South Scrimshaw, and I'm very excited for part 2. I would have preferred this to be an animated short form fictional documentary.
Sure.
I would have preferred that for the type of interaction that I had with it as a game on that level. It's not what I go looking for when I go to play a game. I think it was a really unique experience, and I'm glad it exists as it is, but I wouldn't classify it as a game. But you've superseded me by nominating it, so it is indeed a game.
It's game of the year.
Yeah. But I loved it. I had a great time with it.
Yeah, and I think, like you were saying, that the verisimilitude of, like, the whole thing about this alien whale, but then every once in a while they're like, and now our documentary crew had to go replace the batteries in one of our drones, and you're like, okay, I'm getting a nugget of, like, that's what's tricking me into thinking that it's real, because suddenly they're half breaking the fourth wall to be like, we needed to move on to the next shooting location.
Yeah, they're breaking like their fourth wall, which it's like an internal fourth wall, which is kind of cool.
It's very good.
Yeah.
Nice. All right, moving on. We've got Super Mario Brothers Wonder from Nintendo, released on October 20th. I know I played this game, but I'm curious to hear what y'all's thoughts on it. Who had a chance to play this game? Yeah, go ahead. Kyle? It's an audio form, folks. It's an audio form.
I really enjoyed Super Mario Bros. Wonder. When we talked about it on the last local chat, me and Jake both kind of admitted to the fact that we had never really completed a side-scrolling 2D or 3D Mario game before. And my heart, I think, is more in love with games like Odyssey and Super Mario World N64 and the 3D version of that character and what Mario's capable of doing. And I think that Wonder is the first time that I ever actually connected with it's 3D, but the 2D version, the side-scrolling version of Mario in a game. And I loved it. I mean, I was talking about just the little tiny details that Nintendo put in there. Nintendo is so good at this kind of stuff. It's excellent. The amount of art direction and character direction that they put within that art. So like the environment, the way it interacts with you as you walk past it, the way the monsters will like look at you if they're in a row and you jump on the first one, the one in the next one down the row will look at you like oh crap, I'm about to die. Like it's the little tiny things like that that make it so enjoyable. I think the music was really fitting for the story of the worlds that they're telling. The wonder seeds and everything made the wackiness and the unpredictability of the platforming 10 times better than I think it would have been otherwise. I think Nintendo obviously knows how to craft a platforming level, but the added ability to make it chaotic in a way that I've never experienced before in a Mario game, I think was excellent. I never got tired of getting those seeds and just creating that chaos and running around in it and trying to get everything I could out of each level before moving on. So I really enjoyed it, and I had a really good time with it. Not my game of the year, but it's just so excellently crafted, and I really enjoyed it.
Awesome. Jake, you played it as well?
Yeah. I think what I had said on the local chat, echoing some of Kyle's sentiments, but that I was by and large just kind of even on it. I love the music, love the art, love the imaginativeness of the changes to the levels and all that. But my thing is, we're so spoiled by the quality of product that Nintendo consistently puts out that even when they put out just an okay game, it's still a really good game.
Yeah.
But it's like, yeah, it's Nintendo, so it's gonna be great. But yeah. That's
Awesome. Yeah, I think for me,
fence sitting answer.
I probably have a tiny bit more 2D Mario experience than you guys. I think for me, the thing that really struck me about Super Mario Brothers Wonder is that for Mario games, especially 2D Mario games, Nintendo has mastered 2D platformers, in particular the Super Mario Brothers series, and they keep putting out Super Mario Brothers 2D platforming games, and they have always played it kind of safe. They usually add one or two little gimmicks. They make it look a little prettier. Maybe there's a multiplayer mode, and they just have really cool levels. And you know what? It works. Like that's all they have to do because they have mastered how to make a 2D platformer feel good and satisfying, right? And it's kind of like what you're saying, Jake. Like they have delivered such a high quality of games that it's actually kind of lowered the overall perception of these games because you've gotten used to that quality. And what's surprising for me about Super Mario Brothers Wonder is they are taking so many risks with this game. They don't play it safe. It can be easy to not notice that if you're not used to Mario 2D platformers, but they've honestly gotten a little stale. They would always be like, we're going to try one little thing in this. We're going to tweak one little thing. But for Super Mario Brothers Wonder, there's so many different things. You know, like Kyle, you talked about how they tweak the enemies so the enemies are reactive, and it's even the existing enemies like Goombas, like they are reactive to you even when you're not touching them, and they're letting off little sound effects and stuff. Like the just sheer variety of levels and things that will happen in a level. When you hit a Wonder Seed, the level all of a sudden changes completely. It goes upside down. You've got bowls rushing after you. You've got singing piranha plants. Like we talked about this on stream. It feels like they played a shitload of Super Mario Maker and Super Mario Maker 2 and took a lot of notes of all the crazy things the community were doing. And then they used those notes to build a whole new game and made each level its own weird little level. Instead of just focusing on changing one or two things, they made so many different changes with this. And it works. It works really well. And it's crazy. It feels like, I think about Dan Reichert at Giant Bomb. He talks about how this is probably the best Super Mario Brothers 2D platformer since Super Mario World. And he may like it more than Super Mario World. And he's like a Super Mario fanboy, and I think to me that tells me that for fans of this series, they recognize that they got kind of complacent with what Nintendo was delivering, and the fact that Wonder tries so many different things and a lot of them land, all those changes is very inventive. But that being said, you got to kind of understand the context of the series to see the changes they're making. If you're coming into it fresh, it may not feel that crazy, but within that fan base, within the games they've previously made, it was a big risk for them, and it feels like it really paid off. And it just very delightful, fun, charming game.
It's so nice to look at, and it's kind of like Hi-Fi Rush was like a pleasant place to play a game.
Mm-hmm.
What did you think about it, Will?
I didn't play it. I'm not not spending the Nintendo tax to play a 2D Mario. I'm sorry. I'm just not gonna do it. Just not.
You'll get it on sale next year.
Yeah, probably. Mario 2D side-scrolling Marios, I've always tried to play co-op, and then I hate them because co-op's terrible in those games, and then I never go back to give them a chance.
Yeah. This one I've heard, depending on the mode, is okay.
Yeah, I'll probably download it and play it myself.
Cool. Yeah, that's the way to do it. Folks, October 23rd, fresh out of Roblox.
And October was
Zeekers
stacked.
released Lethal Company. I don't know. I know you all love this game. Who wants to start with this one?
I mean, I can start. Lethal Company.
Go for it.
I need more enthusiasm. I need more. This is the top 15 games of the year. Give me more fucking enthusiasm.
Lethal Company. It's Lethal Company. Pew, 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 pew. Put a video of tunnel subway surfers next to me. But Lethal Company, it's so incredible, and we love it. It is a 4-player. You're going on a ship. You're getting scrap from the scrap places, and you're bringing it back to pay the Lizard King, the Octopus Boy. And if you don't pay him back in the 3 days, you get booted into space. It is the best use of proximity chat I've ever seen in a video game ever. And it doesn't even do anything that crazy. I was literally reading a Twitter thread where the guy was like, yeah, I was using Unity's thing and it wasn't really working, so I just went with like the base thing and something else, and it just like I adjusted a couple values.
Oh, wait a minute. This was the one thing I wanted to talk about with this game. Can I cut in here?
Oh,
yes.
God. Yeah, maybe.
It's positive, which is everybody was like, oh, this game's so fun. Like there's co-op shenanigans, the monsters. And I'm like, yeah, that's cool. And I play the game. And the thing that immediately punches me in the fucking ear and impresses me the most out of this entire fucking game is the audio design. Like exactly like you're talking about. Proximity chat's not new. There's plenty of games that do proximity chat. Honestly, a lot more games need to do proximity chat. And people are like, oh, it's the proximity chat that makes this game so cool, etc. And it's like, no. It's not just doing proximity chat. Y'all are underrating what this game is doing. It has so many fucking layers of incredible audio design on top of it. So for example, proximity chat, you're in the ship, somebody's next to you, you just hear them. They're 3 steps away. You get a dim volume, that's proximity chat, of course, but then you start to get this metallic tinge on it because they're speaking inside a metal tube and it's starting to echo.
All the
further away they go,
kinds of reverb they have, depending on the level, very good.
And all the different sounds that are being made, even when you're completely stationary and there's nobody around you, there's like very subtle weaving of atmospheric effects into the sound. Like that's the thing that struck me about this game is it's doing a lot of cool things. It's doing a lot of things great, but the thing that blows my fucking socks off about this game is just the audio design and how that weaves into the proximity chat. Like that cannot be underestimated. The game sounds absolutely incredible. Sorry, you can continue, Will.
Yeah, I was about to go into the sound, but that's okay. I won't. No, it's just like the sound, like Ian said, is incredible. I think if this game didn't have any of that, it wouldn't be anywhere near where it is. The mods community is also great. This game's by one developer, and they welcome mods. The having up to 30 or up to 50 people on the ship with you if you want. I think our most we had 9. Which got wild, but it doesn't matter even as a stream game because you're just pairing off or like with a small group of people, and it just makes it so much better. I've never seen a game get slapstick comedy right so perfectly. I bring it up every single time, but Jake and Vic with the coil heads and Jake saying, "It's right behind me, isn't it?" And just their ending. There's so many moments like that. When you die, you get to watch the other players, and of course they don't know if you've died. Just so much of that is absolutely fun, and I just want to play more of it all the time.
Yeah, I am just going to echo what I said on local chat last time, which is it's the most fun I've ever had with an early access game because it doesn't feel like an early access game. It's so fleshed out and works pretty seamlessly, even with mods. I think the mod support is great, but so many games add the ability for mods to be added into the game and then it breaks the game. Whereas like this doesn't really have that. I've had a couple crashes, but nothing to the effect of like that it took away from my experience of playing. I smile and laugh at something every time we play, and I think it's cool to see a community so quickly build up around something, and to just see that sort of love for something new and exciting, and the friendships that are made through the proximity chat is like crazy. Where I think, Will, we were talking about, or maybe it was Jake, we were talking about like there are points when you're playing, especially with the mods for More Company, you're like with someone you don't know, and it's just the two of you. So then it's like, well, you have to say something, and it's like you just start talking, you get to know their voice even if you don't know them in person, and it's like, oh, it's Vic. Like I know Vic because this thing happened to me and her, or me and them, and it's just it's incredible. I love it, and I want to play more of it.
Yeah, to echo Ian, great sound design, and to echo Will and Kyle, great the opportunity for emergent storytelling, where there's certainly no like narrative, but it's the moments that you get into with the group that are delightful. My only caveat being, I don't ever see myself playing this by myself. It's only a multiplayer game in my mind. Yeah. A great time.
Fantastic game.
Yeah, awesome. So next up, October 27th from Remedy, we have Alan Wake 2. Will, why don't you tell us about this game?
This game, folks, I don't know if you've ever played Alan Wake American Nightmare, but this is the sequel to that. Alan Wake 2.
Just the DLC, not a sequel to Alan Wake.
Yeah.
Just the DLC.
You told me 11 years ago when I first played Alan Wake that there would be a sequel in 11 years. I probably wouldn't believe you. Alan Wake 2 takes what it did in Alan Wake and says, hey, what if we had money when we made this? And several more brains. It is an incredible video game, top to bottom, from video to visuals to graphics to the way you see things with your eyes, to the audio and the controls and the level design and the writing and all that sort of stuff. It is absolutely top notch. You can't get better than this. The seamlessness. I've never seen FMV and video games blend so well in my entire life, where the first time you see the like shadowy Max Payne, Alex Casey, and all that stuff, it blew my mind. Like my mouth dropped the first time you get like the echo lineup, then you realize you can just walk around with it is crazy. The storytelling's really great. I actually found myself playing a lot of Saga's story because it was just weird enough where you're like something weird would happen and you're like, what the hell is going on here? Like, who are you people? And the world building and just the way the game felt, I thought you never felt like you were a weakling, but there were times where you're just like running through the forest, it's pitch black, and your battery and your flashlight's going down, and you're just like, oh no, like what is around me? Where are these wolf boys? It feels great. The music section is fantastic. I don't know if everyone should go play that or at least watch the Game Awards presentation of it, because it's exactly the same.
That doesn't even do it an ounce of justice.
I mean, it does it some justice
when you're
where you
actually
can like
in the game.
See it. The weaving of, hey, we cast this guy as Alan Wake 14 years ago or 13 years ago, and we don't want to change him, so we're just going to have the other voice actor lip dub over him, but then he's also going to play a character, and then the game developer, I'm going to be Sam Lake in the game, but also I'm Alex Casey in the game, and I'm also the other guy in the other thing. And then, hey, what if we put a full 15-minute short film we shot for this in a movie theater in the middle of the game, and you just stand in the movie theater watching it being like, Are there going to be enemies? Should I be scared? Am I
Or
just watching
no
a horror
narrative
movie
purpose.
in a horror game and it's not in English? It's just a fantastic video game.
I'm watching foreign films
I
in
know.
the video game.
It's
Yeah.
it's absolutely wild. I love it. Someone else. Oh, it's also my game of the year. Sorry, I should have said that up front. Ding ding ding. Yay. That's just so good. Anyway, someone else talk about it.
Yeah, this
Nobody else talk
rocked.
about it.
No, I want to talk about it because this was, I think, Kyle, I think you and I both played original flavor Alan Wake like the week before this game came out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had played Control. That was the only Remedy game I had played prior to playing original Alan Wake, and then Alan Wake 2. And then I enjoyed Alan Wake 2 so much I actually went and played Quantum Break just to see what was going on over there. But no, yeah, Alan Wake 2 was crazy. It was like it was to swing such a big swing for the fences and mostly hit it. It's like it's still got, the combat's a little bit janky, and some of the forest level traversal is a little confusing, but otherwise Remedy firing on all cylinders. It's audacious to title your game Alan Wake 2, and then you don't see Alan Wake for like 2 or 3 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You start
And,
the
like,
game
I
as a
felt-
naked man who's not
Yeah, you
Alan
start
Wake.
the game,
Naked
And
old
then-
man.
Yeah.
and then you're just like a different character that you've never seen before. But yeah, Will, like you said, like you're playing Saga Anderson, this new character, and as you're going through the game, other characters that you do recognize from the first game are interacting with you in like a very familiar kind of way, and you're like, okay, yeah, what the heck is going on here? I'm very excited to go and do the new game plus, the final draft.
Yeah. Same.
Which supposedly has a new ending and some additional, they add in, I guess, new stuff with Dr. Darling from Control. There's a lot of emphasis, or not a lot of emphasis, but there's a heavy emphasis of the Federal Bureau of Control in the broader Sam Lake Remedy verse. Yeah, I think the Champion of Light musical number section is like maybe the best thing that has been in a video game in like 5 or 6 years. It's so wild. And knowing, of course, Remedy's affiliation with Poets of the Fall, who play their in-universe band Old Gods of Asgard in Alan Wake and Control, and they're mentioned in Quantum Break, but I don't think they have any original music in it, or not any that I heard. There's no big like set piece number like there was in Alan Wake or Control or Alan Wake 2. But yeah, that combination of the FMV stuff in the video game environment where you're like going around and some of the FMV characters will be like pointing the direction
Yeah.
that you're supposed to go. And I know I mentioned this on stream, but it's that's the level where you first get the flare gun. And the first time you get it and you like walk around the corner, and it's all supposedly the conceit of the whole level is that it's taking place in like a TV like production soundstage, and you go around the corner and in like white gaff tape on the floor it says "wait for the guitar solo." And you're like, okay, I will. And it's so good. Yeah, this story it's one of those stories that it's like, it's definitely, I mean, Sam Lake is like a writer's writer where he's writing stuff and then you're like thinking about it, you're like, oh yeah, that's so good. And inspiring then like new stories in my mind as a writer. Yeah, I was thrilled with Alan Wake 2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it very much. Like you said, I went back and played the first one, and it's funny how even on like the remastered version of the original Alan Wake, you can see that through line that they're pulling at in Alan Wake 2. I think Alan Wake 1 is really actually held back by its combat because there's way too much of it. and it's not the best, and it's much more a visual showcase for the game rather than, hey, here's something actually fun for the player to do for the majority of the game. It's more like, this looks cool. And I feel like Alan Wake 2 leans much less on the combat, but it's still janky, like you said. It's still like, it just doesn't feel great, and I know that that's on purpose. I really enjoyed the meta. What's up?
Is it on purpose? I did not finish the game. Is it on purpose? Is that actually something? The combat jank?
I think it's just a Remedy game.
Okay.
So like controls.
I just wasn't sure. Sorry, I just wasn't sure if you were implying like there's a story reason for it or not.
No. I mean, it's designed that way just because they're like, we don't want this to feel amazing, because that's not the point of the game. They want it. In my mind, the experience was, we want this to feel a little frantic and a little frenetic, because that's not the point of the story that we're telling. It's just a way to get you through to the next checkpoint in the script that we have. I enjoyed the meta narrative and the meta elements that were pulled into it. I did find myself like rolling my eyes at like, this might be a step too far. Like, this is, I am fine with a writer being a writer's writer, but at a certain point, it's so self-indulgent that like, I stopped connecting with it on an emotional level, and it was more like a technical analysis of what I was playing, and that's not fun for me. I also wish that I hadn't had that moment in the TV station spoiled for me, because I was waiting for it the entire time. So when it finally happened, I was like, well, this isn't fun. Like, I knew exactly what was going to happen.
Was it like a retweet or something, or?
I watched the Game Awards, and then everyone was like, it's impossible to be around that show and not get, this is in the game. Like, so when it started happening, I was like, well, this is what they were doing. So the sort of the reveling of the weirdness was sort of sucked out from the narrative thread at that point. All that said, I do think that on a technical level, graphically, from a technical perspective, it is so impressive what Remedy was able to pull off with that game. It looks stunning, and I don't know if I've played, at least this year, a more detailed world that just is suffused with life. Like, it just oozes like, hey, we put a lot of detail into how the trees move in the forest, and how the environment can shift just with a change of lighting, and how somber and action packed and scary and all these different emotions they can instantly call up from the player's psyche just with very simple tweaks to the landscape and everything. And it was great from that perspective.
How are there 10 different sunsets?
I don't know.
There's so many.
What's up?
Yeah.
Oh, or if you weren't done, Kyle, I want to let you finish.
No, I was just going to say that from a technical level, I really enjoyed the work that Remedy put into the game, and I think it is a standout moment for a non like Call of Duty level game that still definitely has a ton of money put into it and a ton of time and effort. I think that should always be applauded. I just feel like the story was not. After a certain point, it became more about itself, which is the point. But like, I also didn't enjoy it as much as I thought I would. But from a technical standpoint, I think it was excellent.
Yeah. Well, we haven't even talked about. I think the Dark Place, the Dark Place levels is like some of the best art direction, level design, kind of the ability to the incorporating of the writer's room where you can rewrite the level with like different story beats. That stuff's great. And like the little like silhouette of the typewriter that comes up in like the lower third of the screen.
All the subway stuff is great. Like the first time going through that of
the way, I mean, we kind of talked about this a little bit in Discord, but the way that the artists at Remedy dress a set is crazy. Like Control was definitely like it had a very specific artistic direction, but this, especially going down into the subway. I mean, up all the stuff up on the streets. There's messages in the graffiti. The graffiti is all really good, but like things where you realize as it being like Alan Wake's subconscious or whatever, it's all stuff that's specific to him. And when you go down into the subway and all like the signage that you really have to get close to look at, but it's like lines of dialogue from the first game, or it's like just like
Mhm.
adages about the writing process, but it looks like, you know, a sign that you'd see in a subway. Um, it was interesting to me. It took me a while. I never had this thought in Alan Wake 1, but it took me like a couple walkthroughs of Alan's storyline in Alan Wake 2 to realize that Alan is a very unreliable narrator.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
yeah, like it just for whatever reason that didn't click with me because
He's reliably unreliable
oh yeah,
because the story needs him to be.
it was the moment when he's got a scene with Mr. Door, and the implication I got, well, I guess I won't spoil, but he's got a bit with Mr. Door, and he says something like, he's like, "Oh, so the masks are coming off," and Mr. Door is like, "No, I don't think that's quite right."
Yeah,
And
yeah,
then
yeah.
the very next line of inner monologue is he's like, "So the masks were coming off." I'm like, "Oh, okay,
Yeah.
you're just
That-
not listening."
And there's also that part early on where they're like, it's Saga and Alex and Alan. What's the fucking? There's so many nested names. It's Saga and her partner, and she says, "What kind of cult calls themselves a cult?" And I'm like, okay, yeah, that's a dig at Alan Wake's shitty writing there. You know, it's very. I think what I appreciate about this game is they knew what they wanted to make, and they went hog fucking wild for it, right? Like you're talking about the signs in the subway, etc. They knew what they wanted to make, and they didn't say, okay, it's going to be a shooter, but in the background, we're going to have the story theming like this. You know, it's going to be a survival horror, but we're going to have these elements of themes over here. They're like, no. First and foremost is the story we want to tell and the ways in which we want to tell it, and we're going to saturate the entire fucking game with that story, with narrative themes, tones, etc. And then there's also going to be a game in there. And I really appreciate that they made something completely unique. They tried a lot of crazy things, and they went all the way with all of those crazy things, with the FMV, with the writer's room, the recurring themes, etc. And that to me is like, you know, the game didn't fully work for me, but I really appreciate and love that they didn't just make another video game, that there is so much uniqueness in here, and they did not hold back in creating their aesthetic vision.
Yeah, crazy to see a game swing so big.
Yeah.
Especially nowadays.
Yeah.
The tense moments when you happen upon the sheriff and he's like, "Hey, Alan," and you're just like,
Oh,
He's
yeah.
so friendly. He's like, I just got this little like side room in the subway.
This ain't
I'm-
right.
"Oh, hey, Alan," and you're just like,
When's
"What?"
this shoe
Hello?
gonna drop?
Oh, is that where he was?
Thanks, Tim. Thanks, Tim. Yeah.
Iceman.
boy. Well, folks, time to move on to the next game. November 2nd, from Teon, RoboCop Rogue City. Will, tell me about this little game.
This garbage game is terrible and awful. No. RoboCop Rogue City is the perfect RoboCop video game. No notes. It is the perfect 7 of regular video games, but it is the perfect 10 of a RoboCop video game. It feels like they just pulled the world, warped back into the 80s, and they were just on set and they were coming up with stuff. I remember this note from the developers, but they're like, "Hey, we didn't want to make an FPS because that's too obvious, so we made it RPG," and it really works. You're grabbing your skills, your upgrades, you are putting them in certain areas. You're enhancing your scanning. You're enhancing your talking with people, your relationships. There's different outcomes with people, and you either uphold the law or protect. What is it? Uphold the law or protect justice?
Serve the public trust.
Serve the public trust. That's what it is. So you have that whole thing. There's a through line where you select the mayor at the end of the game. It's the story's not great. It's not worth being not that great. It's the brother of a character from the first game, and you're just like, okay, we're just doing, or from the first movie. You're like, we're just doing that. But The moment-to-moment gameplay feels great. You feel good as RoboCop. You're just invincible all the time. And sometimes you're like, oh, my health's low, and you just hit the button to make it go up again. There were a couple moments where you're kind of, I was like saved with like 0 health, but just shooting guys' arms off, freaks, seeing all the weird stuff in that game. It's the perfect game. I highly recommend to go play it if you like RoboCop.
I feel like exactly like you said, they nailed the RoboCop look and feel. You know, we don't have a lot of movie tie-in B games anymore. The industry finally realized that they're shitty and they should stop making them. But a lot of those were like, oh, there's an Iron Man movie coming out, and they're like, okay, well, let's do a 2D side scroller, but it's Iron Man. You know, we're just going to kind of theme a generic game, etc. But this felt like they went the opposite way, which was, you know, hey, we're going to look at RoboCop, we're going to look at the IP, and just like Alan Wake 2, we're going to commit to that vision, and we're going to saturate the entire fucking game with Alan Wake. And we're just going to have, you know, all sorts of references. You're going to go to the station, you're going to have that look and feel, you're going to shoot people in the dick. It's going to be fantastic. And like you said, the game's a 7 out of 10 in terms of gameplay, but in terms of feel, it's a fucking 10 out of 10 RoboCops. Like, they nailed it. And there's a lot of games out there that feel and play better, but their aesthetic is like, the aesthetic's okay. I mean, I guess they're going for something here, but it feels either generic or not really interesting. And this is kind of the opposite. And it's really cool to see them just nail the look of something established, but not used often in video games.
Yeah. I was thrilled that the very first achievement I got, completely by accident, was for shooting an enemy in a sensitive spot. It's like, oh yeah, remember that scene?
It's funny, we talk so much about it
shoots that guy.
It being just like RoboCop in feel, but I think they also nailed the tone of the movies, which is tough to do with, as we know, with all the Starship Trooper games. It is tough to nail Paul Verhoeven theming, and I think
we gotta get him on stream to play,
especially if you listen to the radio stations where it's like sleeping pills for kids, or like Mr. Fuzzy was caught in a brothel today and shot by 12 on his way out. And like, it's crazy. Jake, you want to talk more about it?
I actually I bounced off it a little bit. I got like 3 or 4 hours into it and wasn't
video games
100% vibing with it. But I want to go back to it because I did, for all the same reasons. I think Peter Weller really carries a lot of this. The fact that they got him back to do the voice, I think sells a lot of it and makes it feel, you're like, oh yeah, it's a RoboCop game. It's not someone doing the RoboCop voice, it's RoboCop. Yeah.
Kyle?
Yeah, I'll be quick. I played the demo, and I did about an hour 45. I think you can beat it in like 90 minutes, but I wanted to look around everywhere. Vibes, 10 out of 10. Like, it's RoboCop. There's no denying it. And the fact that it's developed with Unreal Engine 5 and looks so good on like running at like 60 FPS, the texture work in that game is incredible. The reflections, like all the RT stuff is great. I just found the gameplay way too repetitive. Like, just the shooting was like, I'm God, and being God gets old after a while. And I liked the punchiness of everything. Like, it really makes you feel like RoboCop. And that aspect of it is amazing. But the RPG elements for what you can do within the demo, I was like, I get where this is going. If I'm really interested, I can just look up a video of someone who's maxed out everything. I wasn't interested in playing it myself, but the demo was more than enough for me. I think it's great that they went so far making a AA game, like solidly mid-tier, like, this is what we're capable of. This is what you're getting. It's not massively open world. We're not telling this deep, rich, narrative driven story. It's just like a RoboCop story in RoboCop world in a video game. And that's all it needs to be. And I'm glad that so many people have responded really well to it. It didn't really stick with me, but I liked what I played, and I had enough of what I wanted from the demo.
If old Detroit looked as good as Dark Place, New York, I think that would be pretty hype. But yeah, I'll go back to it. I like Peter Weller and I like RoboCop, and I want more.
Hell yeah.
Awesome. Final game on the list, December 8th, a late entry, but a strong contender here from Aramite Games, Against the Storm. Before I dive into this, anybody else played this game?
I played it way back when it was early access, I think.
Yeah, that's a good point. This was the 1.0 release on December 8th. Against the Storm is it is a city builder, but instead of each gameplay, each game or save that you have being, I'm going to take a city from nothing and build it all the way up, and then 20, 30 hours in, I go, cool, and I hit some weird victory objective. This is more of a run-based city building game, so it's providing a very fresh tweak on the genre, where essentially each run you are building multiple settlements, and each settlement will take you anywhere between, I think my fastest was like 20 minutes to 60 minutes. So you have a settlement, there's challenges or orders that are unlocking as you play, and they require you to do certain things. There's like a variety of buildings and a variety of mechanics with those buildings. And so what you end up doing is, even though you're building multiple cities, I probably built, 30 plus cities or settlements in the time that I played this game. Every single one was slightly different. And part of it was because of the location, part of it was because of the orders, part of it was because what I started to build towards. I'm like, hey, I'm going to focus on like opening glades in this one, so it's all about expansion. I'm going to focus on leathers in this one. I'm going to focus on city supplies. And that's kind of what makes this game great, is that for city builders, there's a lot of fantastic city builders out there right now, but the problem is they start to feel the same, and you always hit this point 10, 12 hours into your city where you say, hey, I could probably do this better. Maybe I should restart, or I've kind of lost my steam. My city's pretty big. Do I really need to build it even bigger? And you lose motivation. Whereas this one just literally is built in a restart mechanic, and so much variety through the mechanics. And it just feels like something that is rejuvenating the city builder genre when it's starting to feel a bit stale. And it's really cool to see an indie game do that.
I dig the artwork
thoughts?
style. It looks great. Yeah, and just from looking at some of the gameplay stuff I have over on my other monitor, it looks fun. I've never sunk my teeth really deeply into a city builder. The closest I've gotten was like, I guess, like SimCity 2000 when I was younger, and like Sim Theme Park. So this might be one that I check out based on your recommendation, Ian.
Yeah, it's neat. Will, what did you think of the game?
It was good. I played. What did you say to me?
Nothing. Okay, I bought the game. I didn't know it was on Gamecast, but I bought the game, but I don't regret it. They deserve the money.
Did you buy Pal World too?
No, that I knew. That I knew it was on Game Pass.
I almost bought it. No, I had a fun time with it. Again, I think this was in 2022 I played it. I think I ended up refunding it only because I said, hey, this is an early access. I'm going to wait for it to come out.
No, we don't need to pause in that stupid
fucking logic. It also wasn't on Game Pass at the time, so now it's on Game Pass. So it was fun. I just didn't like necessarily some of the gameplay about it. It kind of felt, I don't know, it felt a little too RTS-y to me, but I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, I don't know about that, because they must have either taken that out or you're snorting stuff, because there's not really a lot of
could
RTS
be talking about a completely
like,
different game, to be honest with you.
We could be. You refunded the wrong game.
Yeah.
Well, folks, that's going to do it for our Game of the Year 2023 discussion. Thank you guys so much for hanging in here with us. Let's go through the list, starting with all of the quote unquote honorable mentions in release order. We had Hi-Fi Rush, Shadows of Doubt, Star Wars Jedi Survivor, BattleBit Remastered, Mars First Logistics, Armored Core 6 Fires of Rubicon, Cyberpunk 2077, Phantom Liberty, Super Mario Bros. Wonder, Lethal Company, RoboCop Rogue City, and Against the Storm. And finally, our 4, that's right, fuck you, 4 games of the year. It was an incredible year for gaming. The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, Baldur's Gate 3, South Scrimshaw Part 1, and Alan Wake 2. Gentlemen,
That's a good
what an
group.
incredible year for games.
That's good. I'm very, very happy with everything that's been nominated. It's great.
Same. It's a good feeling. It's an honor just to be nominated, they say, and I'm really feeling that honor tonight, Your Honor.
I feel God in this Chili's tonight.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right,
do
Will, would
anything
you like
for
to take
Jesus.
us out?
What? Yeah, let me take you out here. We're gonna go to Chili's, everybody. So let's go. Thank you so much for tuning in, everybody. That was our game of the year, Best of the Yearies 2023. The name will stick someday. Joining me this week was all the Subpixel boys. We have Kyle, we have Jake, we have Ian, we have Will. We will be back this Saturday, 2 p.m. Eastern, with some delicious Lethal Company, one of the nominated games this year. And we'll be playing that. It's going to be super fun. And then next Tuesday, I believe, is the last episode of Speedrunners? Maybe?
Possibly. I'm close to the top 100. We got to see what happens.
Daddy's close. We just need
How
to get him
fast
over.
can that goose go?
How fast can the goose legally go? Good, any luck catching them killers then? Folks, thank you so much for
the one
listening.
killer.
Just the one killer, actually. It's been super fun. We love all of you. Can't wait for 2024 and the things it'll bring. Thanks for watching, everybody, and we'll see y'all next week.
Bye.